Prince Boji is born to giant parents but is still the smallest person to ever walk the kingdom of Bossy. He is weak, deaf, and naive but still holds the biggest courage to walk with his head held high. His day goes about running around the field and playing with the animals that roam the land of his father. Because of his handicaps, Boji doesn't play with other children his age and younger because there may be misunderstandings between the two parties, and Boji is usually a victim to the people's ridicule. While going about his day, he meets a shadow creature called Cage who instantly holds him at knife point in an attempt to steal his clothes. Boji, after first struggling to understand Cage, reads his lips and starts to carry out the orders given to him by Cage. Cage tells him to take off his clothes and to do it tomorrow at the same spot when Boji does so unhesitant. The next day, Boji goes to meet Cage at the spot agreed while wearing more clothes so that Cage can rob him off them. Cage expresses that Boji is a dimwit for nonchalantly doing all that he is told. Boji then tells him that he appreciates his company and that he only cares for it, and the two become friends, meeting with Boji fat in clothes that Cage will take and going home naked. One day, Boji takes Cage home and gets confronted by his stepmother, Queen Helen, who ridicules him even more for always coming back home naked. She asks Boji to get dressed and go see his father. While dressing, Boji cries to himself for all the ridicule he has received for the day but quickly puts on a brave face and Cage sees him. Cage feels sorry for him and starts to emotionally grow closer to and fonder of him. Boji heads to see his father, King Bos, who ranks at the 7th place on the ranking system. The king tells Boji that he must become strong enough to rule his kingdom and orders Domas to teach him his swordsmanship. Domas accepts and goes to do just that. While in training, Boji's young half-brother, who is bigger and well-developed, Prince Data, appears to challenge Domas. They spar as Boji admires both Domas and Dida. Domas loses to Data, whose strength he likens to that of King Bos, and Boji takes his place to defend him with his own sword. The match is announced in the house and everyone interested comes to watch it play out. Data attacks first, but Boji dodges countless times until he is able to counterattack by landing his soft blow on Data's head, impressing everyone watching and in doubt, including Cage, who cheers him on. Every time Boji dodges and softly counterattacks Data, Data gets mad. Domas stops them and signs to Boji, who stops dodging altogether and gets beat up by Data while he cries mid-match. It continues to get brutal for Boji until Apis, a sword of the king who has been watching from the roof, throws a spear that stops the fight, making Data the winner of the match. Boji sustains wounds from the match and gets bedridden and covered in bandages. He remembers the words Domas signed to him before he stopped dodging Data's attacks, that his way of fighting is not the swordsmanship of a king, and he starts to crawl out of bed to a normal-sized sword and tries to pick it up. He fails to pick it up as he is too small and doesn't have the strength to. He cries his eyes out until Cage throws a coin at him. He turns around to face Cage but wipes his tears away and acts brave so not to embarrass himself to Cage. Cage tells him he has nothing to be ashamed of and that his swordsmanship is uniquely his own. To cut the embarrassment short, Boji shows Cage where his clothes are and Cage tells him that no more will he be taking anything from him because he's on his side from then on. Cage stays by Boji's side while Boji sleeps, and when he is about to leave, someone comes into the room. She puts her hands above the unconscious Boji and they glow a magical green, slowly healing Boji's injuries. Cage leaves knowing that Boji is safe despite his previous suspicions. He meets Bibin, a snake handler and Data's swordsmanship teacher, whom Cage had met when he first went to the castle where Boji lives. Bebin wanted to execute Cage for being a shadow creature belonging to a clan of assassins, but Cage had escaped and now they meet again. The next day, King Bos dies and his will is read in front of his corpse. They announce the successor of the throne to be the first prince of the kingdom, Prince Boji, and this shocks everyone. And after Queen Hilling defies the wishes of her late king and rips apart the will, Prince Data is presented as the new king to the kingdom's people. Boji is hurt by this and runs away to cry his heart out. After confronting Cage again, Bibin goes to tell Boji that Cage is left for a journey and they will never see each other again. Boji goes to seek out Cage on his own. He goes to the snake lair where a giant snake he saved when he was younger called Mitsumata lives. Mitsumata tells Boji that his master, Bibin, has apprehended Cage but let him go on an important journey that he can't tell Boji. But he also assures him that it is not for the sake of harming him. Boji remembers how he was chosen to become king but was opposed as he was weak and frail, and how Cage had promised to be by his side. Boji sets to follow Cage. He goes to speak with the queen and she refuses him the journey for the same reasons as always. He then decides to run away by climbing out a window from high up in the castle. The queen comes in just time before he lets go of the makeshift rope he put together. Dorshi, the queen's shield, pulls him up, but Boji struggles, causing the pieces of the ropes to untee and making him fall to the ground. Queen Hilling hurries to Boji and finds him unconscious and starts to groan loudly and glow in a green light, tearing her dress and putting her hands on Boji to heal his wounds. Boji remembers her from the night of the match when she went in and healed him while he slept. While she is left alone to rest, Hilling remembers her first meeting with Boji and the struggles she had to go through to build the kind of relationship she has with Boji. This makes her a little softer, granting Boji the permission to go on the journey to learn and gain experience and become stronger. She arms him with his teacher, Domas, and an aide for his personal care, Hokuro. Boji sets off on his journey. The trio first make it to a village where Boji runs from Hokuro to go have fun seeing puppets, buying this and that at the market, and sleeping by the fountains. He is later found by Domas and Hokuro without his bag that had all the important things, and Hokuro gets the heat for losing Boji in the first place. The trio then get dinner to calm down and think about a way forward. They commence the journey the next day and find Boji's bag lying on the street. With everything intact, they decide to continue on their journey and walk all the plain valleys and dangerous forests. Boji gets distracted by a butterfly while they're walking and follows it. He falls into a pit guarded by spears and meets the spearman who owns it. The man kills a wild pig and feasts with Boji, and they dance together when a creation of new animals happens from the dead one that they're eating. After that, the man explains the process to Boji and decides he wants to sacrifice him for the creation of more new lives from his. Boji manages to escape the man and gets together with his company. They set up camp to rest for the night when, while eating, Boji's meat is stabbed by knives thrown from a distance that the three of them can't detect. In the morning, they see a pack of dogs lying dead on the ground from eating Boji's stabbed meat. It was poisoned. After burying the dogs, they go to another town that has a hole of fire in the ground called the Gates of Hell, a pit into the underworld. Domus tells Hokuro to find a place for them to rest for the night, and he takes Boji to see the Gates of Hell. When they get there, Domus pushes Boji into the fire pit and leaves him there for dead. But Boji lands safely on the floor of the pit. While marveling how so, Cage appears from his bag, and the two reunite in tears of friendship. Cage tells Boji that he's been with him from the moment he fell off the window trying to escape, to when he wanted to bite into the poisoned meat. He tells him that he was sent to accompany Boji to meet the man that will make him strong, by Bibin the snake handler. And the journey they are about to take leads them deeper into the underworld to meet this man. They head down toward their destination, but Boji starts to smell gas which passes them out. Two men emerge from the smoke and take Boji and Cage on the back of their rides. They are taken to another kingdom, a kingdom of the underworld. When they come to, they meet the ruler of the kingdom, King Desha, ranked second in the system. He starts to make fun of Boji for his shortcomings and the fact that his younger brother is king and not him. He asks about their intentions, and Cage explains that they are there to see a man that can turn an ordinary man into a man of strength fit for a king. King Desha admits that it's him they're looking for, and that he needs to test the skill level of the person he is to train. One of his knights who transported Boji and Cage to the kingdom stands forward to test Boji. Boji is told to land a strike on the knight who happens to be a captain of the Order of the Underworld, who are famous for their strength and relentlessness. Boji gives it his all, throwing his soft strikes at the guard, who after realizing the situation stands with his guard down. Desha ridicules Boji one more time for his weakness before Cage defends him again. He tells Desha that Boji's strength lies within his ability to dodge attacks precisely. Desha then tells Boji to not let the guard him, and he doesn't. He dodges the attacks with precision and speed, then presses the knights in the room. And when the knight fighting Boji stops and admires his speed, they all look to Desha for approval. Desha mez, as he is still not impressed. He says Boji can survive a battle, but can't win it as he won't be able to get through his enemy's armor. Even after Cage's persuasion for Desha to teach Boji, he refuses, saying that he can't refine talent that's non-existent. The duo is ordered to be kicked out by King Desha. Cage encourages Boji not to give up, and that he will become strong if he works hard. Boji gets motivated to pick up a large rock with fail, and then a smaller rock with fail still. He cries when he realizes that indeed he is absolutely feeble. Cage goes to comfort him. The knight whom Boji had sparred with tells them to take the letter of recommendation they had brought with them to the rightful person. When they ask who, they're told that it is the king's younger brother, Prince Despa. King Desha was just fooling them to amuse himself and didn't let them know any sooner because he's in rivalry with Despa. The pair thank the knights and head to seek for Prince Despa and meet him. They introduce themselves and state the purpose of their visit. Despa asks for compensation for his services, and after Cage pays, he invites them inside. He then reads Boji's hands and finds that Boji is weak and doesn't have even a stray vein of strength in his body, but still he takes him under his wing to train him to his full potential. Boji and Cage head to bed after familiarizing themselves with the household, and Boji wakes up early in the morning the next day and gets a bucket which he half fills with water before cleaning the entire house to the point where he could see his reflection on the floor. He then starts cooking breakfast, adding things that don't belong together at all in the same pot. The smell from the dish is so disgusting that it wakes both Cage and Despa up. They run downstairs to find Boji in the kitchen and are horrified at the fact that he cooked breakfast for them, making them sit down before serving them their breakfast in a bowl. The breakfast looks gooey and disgusting, and Cage and Despa are admittedly worried about consuming such muck. To their surprise, however, Boji simply grabs a spoonful and puts the food in his mouth before giving out a joyous emotion. Watching this, both Despa and Cage get some confidence, and they end up turning the entire bowl in their mouth. To their horror, however, the food tastes disgusting, and they are forced to throw up. Following that encounter, Despa goes in and spends all of his time in his study every day reading about the giants, and finally calls upon Cage. He tells Cage that Boji is the son of giants who are larger than mountains and can eat anything whole. He tells Cage that giants are impervious to any kind of stomach problems and can even digest the strongest of poisons. Cage looks confused, but then suddenly realizes that Boji, having giant's blood, seems to have gotten the stomach of one even if he has none of the other qualities. Despa looks at him seriously and tells him that they cannot let him cook anymore, and Cage agrees, telling Despa that he will cook food for them every day from now on. After that day, Cage takes up the responsibility to keep the house clean and cooks for all of them, which he ends up liking quite a bit. Despa, on the other hand, begins Boji's training. He takes Boji inside of a giant room which is domed and lined up with weapons top to bottom, and tells Cage to stay out. Boji walks with him while Cage explains that this is the training room that he has had specially made and has every single weapon imaginable inside of this world. He tells Boji that every person needs a weapon, as a weapon is simply the extension of hand, a tool which helps them hone their skill, making them even more deadly in any combat situations. He also comments that choosing the right weapon is the very first step, and oftentimes people end up messing up the very first step. He keeps walking, feeling a bit disappointed in himself, but suddenly he spots a weapon on the wall and points at it. Despa smiles at him and tells him that he has excellent intuition. Ever since that day, Boji wakes up every day during the dawn, studies for 2 hours, before helping Cage clean. While Cage is cooking, Boji goes for a job in the mountains which are deemed to be filled with dangerous creatures. He practices his dodging abilities there on an entire flock of flesh-eating birds, knowing that if he gets hit once, it is death for him, as all of them will hold him down and end up swarming him. After coming back from his jog, he takes a cold bath and sits down for breakfast with both Cage and Despa. After breakfast is done, both Despa and Boji goes into the training room, and they stay in the room till the evening, when Boji emerges from the room every single day, exhausted to the level of unconsciousness. Cage, like a good friend, helps him immediately and takes him back to his bed, where he puts him to sleep properly. This has been going on for a couple of weeks now, and Cage wonders how strong Boji has become in these weeks, and one fine afternoon when he was cleaning the house, he overhears a giant rumbling sound coming from inside the training room and rushes in to see whether Boji is alright. He knocks at the door repeatedly, and Despa answers finally, opening the door only a crack, and asks him what does he want. Cage explains that he heard a huge commotion. Before leaving, however, he is able to get a small glimpse of the inside of the room, where he spots Boji in front of a giant boulder which has been split in half. Cage resumes his cleaning but can't wrap his head around the possibility of Boji breaking that boulder into half, and thinks about the weapons that Boji can actually use to break that big of a boulder. His train of thought is interrupted by Boji and Despa, however, who inform him that Boji has finally completed his entire training and has now learned all the secrets of the Despa art. Boji, Cage, and Despa make their way to celebrate Boji's training completion. But as they head out the door, Cage notices that Boji has a sword by his side and asks about it. Boji swings it and impresses Cage, but when he takes it out of the sheath, Cage is utterly disappointed by its slim and needle-like look. Despa confronts Cage about his skepticism when he tells him that giving Boji a needle and calling it a sword is not going to help anyone. Cage apologizes to Boji, and they head to their celebration. While they eat, three monsters whom are citizens of the underworld approach the trio and start to pick a fight. They mock Despa for his looks, and he sends one flying with a punch, which he instantly regrets. The monsters get back up and start to beat him up, but Boji doesn't sit it out, seeing that Despa is ganged up on. He tries to defend, but is easily pushed to the side. He gets back up, and after dodging a few attacks, he lands a blow as soft as a daisy on the monster's chin. The monster, after a second, starts losing his balance and passes out, ruling Boji's punch a knockout. Boji continues to defend and finally draws his weapon, the needle sword, and dodges a few attacks from the monster. In a flash of lightning, he defeats his opponent, who falls to the ground screaming in pain. Cage panics that Boji killed the monster, but Despa checks his vitals and finds that he just passed out as before. Despa then explains to Cage the science behind Boji's weak attacks that still yield great results. The placement and timing of the punch on that certain spot, and the stabbing of the needle without causing extensive damage to the brain or blood vessels. Cage celebrates Boji's victory, and the three head home afterward. On the way home, Despa tells Boji and Cage to head on first as he needs to attend to something. He quickly runs around the corner to go meet the monsters who Boji had just defeated and pays them for their participation in the fight. Later at night, when Boji and Cage are sitting outside, Cage decides to finally tell Boji what has been going on in his castle, having been told by Bibbin. After hearing all of this, Cage asks Boji what he will do. Boji, remembering how Domas had betrayed him, gets scared that Queen Hilling may do him in. He starts to take a walk, and Cage follows him to ask him about his lack of courage. Boji then starts to punch himself and hitting his head on the ground in order to gain his courage back and set for home. Boji and Cage bid their bye to Despa to return home. Despa encourages Boji to love himself as he is and continue to be as courageous as he is. Knights of the Order of the Underworld arrive as the three men are still saying their goodbyes and offer to transport Boji back to his kingdom. Despa explains to them that it is because criminals of the underworld have infiltrated the kingdom, and King Desha has deployed the knights to take Boji home and capture the criminals. The knights explain who the criminals are, and Cage continues to encourage Boji with his newfound strength through the Despa arts. The knights escort Boji back to his kingdom and tell them about the things that have been happening in his absence. They tell them that the criminals that are trying to take over the kingdom were trapped in Desha's dungeons, but were somehow able to escape it and are now ready to wreak havoc on the entire kingdom if nothing is done. Cage asks where Despa is, as he was also supposed to accompany them, but the leader of the guards replies that Despa wanted to ride on his own dear horse, but sadly, the horse never let anyone come near him after Despa left him under Desha's care and has turned completely fat. Despa, however, is adamant and is still riding a fat horse, making him extremely slow. Cage and Boji finally arrive at the kingdom to find a criminal that has left the castle to attack the civilians. The criminal is said to be one of the most dangerous, as even Despa said for the knight not to fight him until he arrives. The criminal, known as Alkin, the sword of the underworld, has cut up the people and is now to face the captain of the underworld order, who is going against Despa. When Boji wants to partake in the fight, the knight stops him, as Despa had said that Boji would be defeated by Alkin if he were to fight him. The knight tells Boji to head for the castle to help protect Queen Hilling, and Boji and Cage make their way to the castle in haste. Boji and Cage finally arrive at the castle, where they see Hyling trying her best to heal Dorshi, while the green troll is beating up the two-headed snake senseless. Boji is horrified at this scene and rushes towards the troll before using his sword to instantly incapacitate him. He then quickly runs up to the snake and starts crying while clutching its dying body. Cage, however, quickly turns his head towards a very confused Hyling. Boji understands what he was trying to say and immediately begs Hyling to heal the snake, but Hyling sadly replies that she has no magical energy left, as all of it has already been used. Boji starts crying again as the snake tells him not to worry about him and that he lived a fulfilling life. Cage, however, is not going to let off this easily and quickly pulls out a bunch of mana bottles from his ass and gives it to Hyling. She is very surprised, as she doesn't even know her, but realizes that she doesn't have enough time and starts drinking the entire liquid. She starts healing the snake while drinking more and more of the bottles. Boji stands there cheating her on, but suddenly turns around to see that the toll has gotten up and is trying to attack them. Boji quickly gets his sword out and uses it to land a very accurate hit on the giant hammer that the ogre is carrying, shattering it in seconds. The ogre seems surprised by immediately tries to crush Boji with his feet, but Boji is not going to let anyone come near Hyling and again proceeds to land a very precise hit on his feet, incapacitating him completely. Cage quickly gets to work and ties the troll up completely and points at Boji to show him that the two-headed snake seems to be fine now. Boji is delighted to see his friend alive and rushes up to Hyling, hugging her tightly for the help she provided. Hyling hugs him back and they start tearing up before Hyling breaks off and starts putting things in order. He walks up to Cage and demands who he is. Cage responds that he is Boji's friend and has been with him for a long time now. Hyling looks at him suspiciously, but claims that she cannot sense any evil aura coming out of him. So for now, she will let him stay with Boji if he pledges his loyalty to Boji and promises to always protect him no matter what, even if it means giving up his own life to save Boji's. Cage seems to be taken aback by this and frankly seems to be pretty hurt. He stayed by Boji's side when no one else believed in him, when everyone left him for dead. He has already risked his life several times for Boji by now and feels insulted by Hyling asking him to prove his loyalty to Boji. Cage gets mad and starts tearing up, shocking Hyling, but the snake informs her that Cage has been with Boji even before he left the kingdom on the journey and has been an essential part in saving his life multiple times. He also informs her that many times when Boji felt demotivated or lost, Cage was the one who kept him company and made sure that he stayed on the right path. Hyling is embarrassed and rushes towards Cage, holding his hand, apologizing for the things she said and thanking him for taking such good care of Boji when he had no other company. Cage gets flustered as he has never felt such love and appreciation before. They turn around and find Boji in front of the unconscious and half-dead bodies of the giant dogs that must have been involved in the battle with Hyling and her comrades. Cage walks up to him and realizes that Boji is sad that they are in such a bad state. Hyling, however, walks up to Boji and immediately starts healing the giant demon dogs while a delighted Boji hugs her out of compassion. The dogs wake up one by one and try to go near Hyling, but Dorshi blocks their way. The snake, however, comments that they harbor no ill will as of now. They all seem to be happy when suddenly the troll wakes up and breaks his ropes, walking towards Boji. Cage quickly hands Boji his sword, but right before reaching Boji, the troll stops and bows down in front of him. He accepts Boji as his master and the superior fighter amongst them and wants to pledge his life to him. Boji tells Cage that he doesn't want him to do anything, but just be friends with them, which Cage agrees to, but Hyling stops them, explaining that Boji someday will become a king and he cannot make everyone his friend. Boji realizes that and walks up to the troll, knighting him and accepting his allegiance towards him. Hyling and Dorshi talk to the snake, who reveals that he can feel a bunch of forces coming up from the underworld, and before someone seizes control on these demon dogs, it is the best to leave them back into the underworld. Hyling looks at him surprised as she thought the underworld was just a fairy tale, but the snake replies that Boji has been through the underworld before and has survived its trials already. Hyling looks at Boji and asks if he could leave these beasts back to the underworld while she tries to seize some sense of control of the fallen kingdom. Boji looks at her worryingly, but the snake and Dorshi both reply that no matter what, they will take care of Hyling and nothing and no one is going to hurt her. This reassures Boji and he, alongside the troll and the other beast dogs, start traveling towards the entrance of the underworld as guided by the snake. They reach a cave, and when they look into it, they see thousands of stairs descending down, making Cage feel sick. Boji also looks a bit shook after watching how many stairs they will have to descend while fighting beasts of the underworld to reach the ground. But the troll simply picks both Cage and Boji up and jumps down from the platform. Both Boji and Cage are super scared, but they finally land at the ground safely with a huge thud. They both look around and are surprised to see a bunch of people already standing there. It seems like there was a massive fight very recently, as there are a bunch of unconscious bodies of the knights of the underworld, and as they look around they spot King Desha, which surprises them. But then Boji's heart drops as he spots Domas standing in his way. Boji starts hyperventilating and goes through a full-fledged panic attack after seeing Domas, who pushed him into the underworld to die, betraying his blind trust completely. Cage touches him and feels the storm of emotions brewing inside of Boji, going completely wild, and realizes that if he doesn't snap him out of it, he will end up spiraling into bigger problems. Cage shouts at Domas to look at them at the top of his lungs and tells him to be ashamed for what he did to Boji. Domas gets one look at them and instantly his eyes are filled with water. He falls to his knees and starts crying like a baby, apologizing for what he did to Boji. He tells Boji that he cared for Boji more than anyone can ever imagine, and was forced to do this because of the orders he got, which he can't go against as per her pledge. He, however, is so ridden with guilt that he tells Boji that, as an apology, he's going to take his own life and jumps off the stairs, falling headfirst on the ground. Boji and Cage both are shocked at this, and are horrified to see Domas' lifeless body on the floor, fearing the worst. Domas' apprentice rushes up to him, scared for his life, but as soon as he reaches him, Domas gets back up and starts cursing himself for having such an overtrained body, as he can't even end his own life. The apprentice, however, looks at him with anger and tells him that he is selfish to do what he did, and if he really wants to make amends, his first priority should be the safety of Boji. Domas looks at him and agrees with him completely, taking up arms once again to defend Boji. Desha looks at all this interestingly and tells his guards to seize the troll immediately, as he is a prisoner from their cell. They all rush towards the troll while Boji and Cage try to dissolve the situation, but it is too late as the troll simply swats them away like flies. One of the guards slashes at him from behind, and when the troll tries punching him, another guard blocks his attack, while some more guards surround him and try to attack him. Their attacks fail because both Domas and Hokuro quickly throw themselves at the front lines and block their attacks, pushing them backwards. Boji and Cage quickly jump off the troll and try to resolve the situation peacefully again, but Desha gets tired of all this foolishness and creates a lightning blast that shocks the troll to the core, knocking him out. Domas and Hokuro immediately stand in front of Boji and tell Desha that they won't let him hurt Boji. Desha looks at them and responds that he has no intentions of hurting anyone apart from one specific person. This confuses them all, and Domas asks who is he talking about. Desha looks at him and tells him that he is after the mastermind of this whole ordeal, the person who suggested King Bos to reincarnate into his younger son's body and start ruling again, the person who released all these prisoners and is controlling everything, Miranjo. Domus is completely shocked at this, and Boji has no words as up till now, he thought that his father was dead. Upon hearing the name of Miranjo, suddenly a memory from his past, which he had long suppressed, resurfaces in his mind, and he remembers a time when he was really young. He was being covered by his mother while the surrounding areas were all destroyed. He remembers hearing the name Miranjo from his mother's mouth when she told her to spare Boji and leave him alone. He remembers how he cried when those beastly arrows struck his poor mother on the back again and again and again while she hopelessly tried to shield Boji from them. He remembers how she looked at him with the same smile that she always had and reassured him softly, telling him that everything will be fine and that she will protect him no matter what. He remembers hearing another volley of arrows falling upon her on the orders of Miranjo, and he remembers the sickening sound the arrows made when they were driven deep inside his mother as she lays there bleeding. Finally, he remembers his mother taking her last breath, just as he spots Miranjo falling to the ground, because his comrades betrayed her and shot an arrow in her as well. Cage snaps him out of this stupor. He realizes that tears are falling from his face as he quickly wipes them off. He looks at Desha and signals to him that he is not going to come in his way of defeating Miranjo, and Desha tells him that even if he doesn't, his father, King Bos, will, because he is really close to Miranjo in both heart and soul. He then turns towards his soldiers and commands them to escort the troll back to the underworld prison, but Boji immediately takes out his sword, ready to defend his fallen friend. Desha looks at him and tells him that the troll has committed crimes against him, as he was supposed to be in his army, but when they were fighting against other trolls, the soldiers in Desha's army ended up torturing the babies of these trolls before killing them, leading to Jigen, the troll, losing his mind one day and killing a bunch of people from his own army, only to be stopped by Desha's younger brother and Despa's older brother, who used to be the leader of the Knights of the Underworld before becoming a criminal himself. Just then, Jigen comes back to consciousness and has one look at Desha before losing his cool and running towards him in full force. Desha, however, is ready for him and uses another lightning blast, but to everyone's surprise, Boji intercepts the blast and dispels it immediately before standing in front of Jigen again. Desha thinks that Boji wants to fight and gets ready for a battle again, but he quickly throws away his sword, trying to communicate that he wants peace. Desha is unable to understand him, but Cage thankfully explains what Boji is saying. Desha slams his mace on the ground and thinks before telling everyone in his army that they are going back to the underworld for now, delighting Boji. Desha, however, tells Jigen that he is also coming back to the underworld with them. Boji quickly grabs his sword once again, but Desha simply tells him that he doesn't want to fight right now, and that he is going to take Jigen back as he wants Jigen to be in his army once again, to make amends to whatever went wrong between them. Before anyone could speak, however, the beast dogs arrive from above. Boji tries to stop them, but they don't listen to him and attack Desha. Boji closes his eyes, scared that Desha will kill them, but to his surprise, he notices that Desha let them attack him, and is bleeding. Desha looks at the beasts and calmly tells them to let them go, and to everyone's surprise, the beasts leave him. He tells them that they also belong in the underworld and are coming with him. He starts walking and both Jigen and the beast also follow behind him, but Jigen looks at Boji one last time before telling him that he will always have allegiance to Boji, and that he is thankful for all that Boji did for him. They all go through the gate and leave for the underworld, and suddenly, Domas and Hokuro arrive in front of Boji, and they again fall to the ground, bowing in front of Boji, apologizing to him, while tears roll down their cheeks. Boji, however, starts getting a panic attack once again and turns around to face in the opposite direction. Cage walks up to Boji and asks him whether he can forgive them. Boji turns around to see Domas, and memories of Domas flash in front of his eyes. Good memories when he used to train him, and then the memories of him pushing him into the abyss to die. He turns around and starts running up the stairs at full pace, while tears roll down his cheeks. Boji runs upstairs and outside in the open, rushing towards the palace to make sure Hyling and the others are safe. On the way, however, him and Cage both spot a man unconscious on the floor, and they go to have a look. They are surprised to see that the man is Despised, one of the Great Fours whose weapon of choice is his spear, and who helped Boji multiple times. They decide to take him back to safety, but both Cage and Boji are physically weak and are unable to drag him even a bit. Thankfully, however, he wakes up by himself and is shocked to see Boji in front of him. He seems to be happy, but his happiness soon turns into sorrow as he tells Boji to leave the kingdom and run away as soon as possible. He tells Boji that Miranjo is planning to kill Hyling, and that she wants to destroy the entire kingdom just because she doesn't want to get separated from King Bossi. Boji is horrified at this and looks at Despised, hoping that he will help them, but Despised looks at him sadly before telling him that he owes her a very big debt and cannot change sides. He then gets up and tells Boji that he cannot let him go further because Boji is going to meddle with Miranjo's horrifying plans. Before he could do anything, however, he feels a giant aura coming out of Boji, and after sensing the immense power that Boji has seemed to grow, he simply sits back down and smiles at him before telling him to go and do as he seems fit. Boji bids him farewell and runs forward in the direction of the castle, when he suddenly spots Alkan, who runs past him towards the castle as well. He follows him to the castle, where he spots two more criminals sitting on the throne, but as soon as Alkan arrives, one of them gets very scared and starts backing off. He runs away quickly and starts scaling the wall while Alkan fights against the other criminal. Boji runs up the wall and blocks the criminal's path and spots that Alkan has defeated his adversary and is chasing this fat guy now. The fatty tries to take Boji on, but he also senses immense power coming from him and gets scared of him. He then tries to play mind games and runs up to Boji, begging him to save him from Alkin, but as soon as he reaches near Boji, he spits a bunch of poison on his face before laughing maniacally, thinking that he killed Boji. Boji, however, has no problem dealing with this, as he is the descendants of giants who have no problems with consuming poison. Cage is very happy that Boji is safe, but suddenly, Alkin also arrives behind the fatty. Fatty jumps off the platform and starts running again, but Boji gives chase, and with one swift attack knocks him to the floor. Alkin, however, is not done with Fatty and walks up to him with his sword unsheathed, ready to kill him, but Boji stands his ground and doesn't budge, ready to defend Fatty, even if it meant fighting the infamous Alkin. They both circle around each other before Alkin starts throwing small stones imbued with his curse magic at Boji, but to his surprise, Boji is able to dodge each and every single one of them without any troubles. Alkin throws a tiny rock again, and this time instead of dodging, Boji simply lands a very precise hit and to their surprise, breaks the small stone in half before showing it to Alkin. Alkin seems to be very surprised at his abilities and gets more cautious around him. Alkin finally decides to use his sword and attacks Boji, who simply dodges his attack before attacking Alkin himself. Alkin blocks the attack, but Boji uses that momentum to come in for a second strike, and this time he lands a very precise blow on his breastplate. Cage expected Alkin to fall, but to his surprise, he is still up and running. He asks Boji whether he messed up the location of the attack, but Boji shakes his head, indicating that the attack landed on the correct position. Alkin decides to go on the offensive and starts unleashing a flurry of attacks at Boji, who skillfully dodges every single one of them thanks to his rigorous training. He dodges all of his attacks and then goes in for another thrust, hitting him just below the chest with pinpoint accuracy, but again has no effect on Alkin, confusing both Boji and Cage. Alkin realizes that Boji's swordsmanship is not good enough to take him down, as he gets some confidence to attack more aggressively. Boji takes his position while Alkin attacks him with all his weight behind the sword. Boji, however, simply touches the tip of his sword to Alkin's sword, and to Alkin's surprise, he completely shatters his sword. Cage is really happy thinking that the fight has ended and starts celebrating, but to his absolute horror, Alkin simply reattaches his sword with his dark arts. He laughs at Boji and attacks him again. That's it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe and watch this next